The world of comic books is something I'm very interested in, but for the most part on the channel here, I mostly talk about the video games, the movies, the television shows, and the culture surrounding Marvel and DC. That's because I got out of collecting comic books way back in the 90s. I've cracked only a handful of physical books for a while. I do know a few people who still like to collect the physical books, though, and it looks like things are really rough on that front with everything that's going on in the world. So I want to talk about that a little bit today. So taking a look at sales numbers, and these numbers are distributed by the folks over at Diamond. These are the people that distribute all of the comics in the world. Back in January of this year, Wonder Woman, a very special issue, 750, sold 167,000 units, but this issue of Thor sold 158, Star Wars sold 97,000. You compare that to numbers 5 years ago, we have a very special Star Wars selling about 1 million copies, but then Batman selling 110, Amazing Spider-Man selling 105. Relatively similar numbers. Back in 2010 here, we've got Siege selling 108, so a worse month by quite a bit. Here's 2005 with New Avengers selling 153,000 copies, Ultimates 2 selling 113. Here's back in January of 2000, where we have Uncanny X-Men selling 113, X-Men selling 109,000. So yeah, there's definitely not as big of a market for comics as there might have been at one point, but it seems to have held relatively steady for the last few years. I mean, certainly there's still money to be made in selling 150,000 copies of a book. But it looks like, along with a lot of other things in the world, comic books are getting pretty heavily delayed. And I think a lot of this has to do with the fact that Marvel and DC and Diamond itself, these people have wanted to move to a digital distribution system. But there are so many pirates out there that I really don't think that's a good idea. I mean, the whole point, the whole nostalgic point of collecting comics for some collectors is they like to have the physical books. Taking away the physical books, this kills the comic book industry. But it looks like Diamond, the people that distribute all the physical comics in the world, said that they would probably not be shipping comics for quite some time. Looks like they had inventory that was supposed to ship out in April, and it is not going to be shipping out to comic book shops anytime soon, though they would like to get that stuff out by May. But when it comes to other things, you probably will not see new physical comics until August. And this, again, this kills the comic book shop. I do think comic books could survive this, and I do think a lot of these small businesses could survive this, but the problem is Marvel and DC have been doing a very good job of making this happen already, and the industry has been a little weak in the knees because of it. We've seen a lot of woke comics fail really, really hard. We're going to talk about that in just a second. Don't you worry. But we've also seen them pushing towards digital, and like I've said in this video, there are so many pirates out there, so many people who consider digital comics to be free. The product, the valuable product, is not the story, not the art, not anything else inside the comic, but the physical comic itself. Once you take away that physical comic, a lot of comic book readers are just flat out never going to pay for that. Regardless of that, the companies that make these comics just seem to really want to embrace digital. And they seem to be taking advantage of this because originally, it looked like DC was not going to pause their digital releases, even though those physical copies of those books would not show up in stores all the way out until maybe August. Fortunately, they did decide to pause digital distribution, but for how long? Eventually, those comics will come out in digital form. People will find them on the 7 Seas, and then probably it will affect physical sales once those copies of those books are in comic book stores' hands when all this is over. So you see a lot of comic book shops saying, pause the industry altogether. Don't just stop delaying the physical books, delay the digital books as well. Stop making and drawing comics for now so that the world can get caught up. Let those artists, let those writers, let those people rest and relax and deal with what's going on in the world. And then when the world goes back to normal, we can start distributing those comics both digitally and physically together. And that seems to be the fairest option. But I don't think Marvel and DC, when it comes to the comic books, really care about what's fair. Marvel has been particularly egregious when it comes to publishing comics that the comic book collectors and comic book stores really don't want. We've seen a lot of woke comics, but nothing has ever been as woke as this. The New Warriors comics. Good God gravy. Things get really bad. So there's the New Warrior series has always been kind of interesting for new and trendy characters, but this latest batch of characters for the New Warriors is more tone deaf than I think anything they've ever put out. Starting off with this character by the name of Screen Time, who this is the worst writing ever. This has to be taking the piss. This has to be a form of trolling, and I think the internet has seen through that. Screen Time is a meme-obsessed super teen whose brain became connected to the internet after becoming exposed to his grandfather's experimental internet gas. Now he can see augmented reality and real-time maps and can instantly Google any fact. Does this make him effectively a genius? He sure acts like it does. This character effectively has a cell phone. This internet gas basically gave him an internal cell phone. That is this kid's superpower. It gets worse. Next up, we have Trailblazer. And Trailblazer is just a regular kid scooped up into the world of teenage superheroing. Her magic backpack is actually a pocket dimension with seemingly infinite space from which she can pull out useful or random objects, and it's not always under her control. She claims to get her power from God, but not the God you're thinking of. Yeah, it's basically, she's basically Dora the Explorer. Dora the Explorer is now a Marvel superhero. Next up, we have B Negative, and this is the most Marvel-y of Marvel's superheroes in this group. He's a teen living vampire exposed to Michael Morbius' blood as a child in a rogue life-saving medical procedure. He still ages like a regular kid, but has all of the abilities of Morbius. He's also obsessed with all the music and attitude of the classic long-past decades like the 90s and the double aughts. The world is a vampire, and so am I. And again, this is bad. This is bad writing, but these three characters, nowhere near as bad as the rest, because whereas I do believe maybe these three characters were designed to be actual heroes, actual characters, it's poorly written, they're poorly designed, but they seem like outliers in the Marvel universe. These next two are so bad, everyone saw right through it for the trolling of what it actually is. Let me introduce you to Snowflake and Safe Space. Yes, they are psychic twins. All twins are psychic, but we are psychic-er. Snowflake is a cryokinetic person and can materialize snowflake-shaped shuriken projectiles for throwing, whereas Safe Space can materialize pink force fields, but he can't inhabit them himself. His reflex only works if he's protecting others. They're hyper-aware of modern culture and optics, and they see their superheroes as a post-ironic meditation on using violence to combat bullying. And they are probably streaming this. Yeah, that went over like a lead balloon. Obviously, these characters were designed to do two major things. The first of which is feed the trolls, to trigger and upset a group of people who care about comic books and use phrases like Snowflake and Safe Space. I don't know why you would ever want to upset potential comic book customers. I can't fathom it. I know for a fact, from my own experiences, feeding the trolls is the worst thing you can do, so choosing to do that is absolutely absurd. But also, you could say that they were doing this to pander and try to please the groups of people who get called Snowflake and Safe Space, and hopefully potentially create customers from them. But even this is so poorly written, so poorly drawn, so poorly created, even the people that are called Snowflake and Safe Space rejected this. Because I think that group of people are getting tired of being pandered to. I think they're tired of this kind of thing. And if you don't do it right, if you don't do it well, then you shouldn't do it at all. And this is as bad as it could possibly be. I mean, this is Kylie Jenner Pepsi commercial bad. And all of this is combined to just create a perfect storm of stupidity surrounding the comic book industry. You can point to all the woke comics over the years, your female Thors and things along that lines, and say that this damaged the industry, the already damaged industry. But you combine this new Warriors concept with the thing that's happening in the world right now, making it difficult to acquire comic books, and then pushing onto people a digital distribution that they already don't want and consider to be free to begin with. You've created a situation where this probably finishes off a dying industry, and that sucks. And look, I don't have any problems with diversity. I don't have any problems with representation. When I see a fat character in a television show or a movie, I celebrate that. I love being represented on the screen. The problem is, I hate it when that fat character is gross and stinks and disgusting and is terrible and is there designed to make fun of fat people or make fat people look like the joke. And that's what they've done here with this new Warrior comic. You can point to all the woke comics that you want and say that this is bad and this destroys the industry, but if you are going to put diversity in your shows, in your products, in your entertainment, it needs to be written well. And if you can't do that, if you're a bad writer, at the very least, don't attack your potential audience. Make your representative characters, make your diverse characters empathetic, sympathetic. Make them characters that people will empathize with and care about, so that you can do the thing that you want to do, which is make the world a better place. When you attack the trolls, when you feed the trolls, when you feed these types of people, you effectively make things worse. And they did that at the worst possible time with the New Warriors. And this probably means the comic book store dream is dead for a lot of people. And that sucks. So do me a favor, let me know what you think about the New Warriors. Let me know what you think about the comic book industry, if this is going to impact you. Let me know what you're doing to survive these crazy times that we are experiencing. And I hope you enjoyed this video. If you do me a favor, drop a like on it down below. While you're down there, hit subscribe, and I'll be reading your comments. Guys, as always, thanks for watching. I love you very much, and I'll speak with you again soon. Snowflake and safe space. Good job, Marvel.